Hello mabuhay! Welcome back to another episode of my Salute House series, and in this video I will be saluting on Johnny and the Sprites, the one of the most distinctive musical preschool programs from the Playhouse Disney era. I first saw this show in April 2011 when I was 4 years old. That was around the time my family came to Metro Manila from my birth town of Daraga, Albay, as part of the period when I spent summer vacations and received my preschool education in Metro Manila from 2011 to 2014, way before permanently moving to Legazpi City, Albay, which I live today. At that time, the channel was still known as Playhouse Disney Asia. Only a few months later, on July 11, 2011, it was rebranded as Disney Junior. Years afterward, the regional Disney Junior channel eventually ended its broadcasts on October 1, 2021. Because I encountered the program near the end of the Playhouse Disney era, Johnny and the Sprites became connected to a very specific chapter of my early childhood. It reminds me of adjusting to life in Metro Manila, watching preschool television, and discovering programs that combined entertainment with music, imagination, and practical lessons. Today I want to explain what made this show extraordinary, how its characters worked together, what lessons it communicated, and why I still believe it deserves recognition. So without further ado, let us roll up to the main video. Lights, camera, action! Oh boy, Johnny and the Sprites is such an extraordinary program, unlike almost anything else I had seen during my early childhood. Johnny and the Sprites combined live-action acting, colorful puppetry, fantasy, comedy, and original musical numbers in a way that made every story feel like a small theatrical production. But instead of presenting its lessons through conventional animation, it created a believable connection between an ordinary human musician and a magical community of sprites. The result was a show that felt warm, imaginative, and unusually personal. When I first watched it at age 4 years old, I mainly noticed the colorful characters, expressive puppets, cheerful songs, and magical setting. I did not yet understand the amount of writing, performance, puppetry, musical composition, and production work required to create it. Looking back now, however, I can appreciate it as a carefully constructed preschool series with strong theatrical influences. It was entertaining without becoming excessively loud, educational without sounding like a classroom lecture, and imaginative without losing its connection to everyday feelings and experiences. That balance is one of the main reasons I consider it a memorable hidden gem from Playhouse Disney. Now let us talk about what the show is about. Johnny and the Sprites centers on Johnny, a songwriter who moves into a house that once belonged to his great-uncle. Near the house, he discovers a magical world known as Grotto's Grove, where small creatures called sprites live. Johnny gradually becomes their friend, mentor, and connection to the human world. In return, the sprites introduce Johnny to their customs, magic, environment, and unusual way of understanding life. The stories usually begin with a simple problem. A sprite might feel insecure, misunderstand another character, become impatient, struggle with responsibility, or make a magical mistake. Johnny then helps everyone slow down, discuss what happened, and discover a constructive solution. Music is central to that process. The songs do not merely interrupt the story, they explain feelings, reinforce lessons, and help the characters communicate ideas that might otherwise be difficult for young children to express. The central goal of the show is to promote emotional understanding, cooperation, creativity, confidence, environmental awareness, and respect for individual differences. Now let us talk about the main characters and the personal analysis. Johnny is a musician, songwriter, and the primary human character. He is cheerful, imaginative, patient, and still connected to a childlike sense of wonder. What I admire about Johnny is that he does not treat the sprites as inferior simply because they know little about the human world. He listens to them and accepts that he can also learn from their knowledge and experiences. His greatest skill is musical communication. Whenever a character is confused or discouraged, Johnny can often turn the situation into a song that makes the lesson easier to remember. To me, Johnny represents patient mentorship. He demonstrates that a responsible adult can guide children without controlling every decision for them. Ginger is energetic, confident, competitive, and expressive. She frequently acts before considering every consequence, but her enthusiasm also gives the group momentum. Some of her stories address confidence, listening, self-image, and learning how personal choices can affect others. In one story, she becomes self-conscious about her curly antennae. That situation teaches viewers that unusual features should not be treated as flaws. I liked Ginger because her strong personality made the stories lively. She also showed that confidence becomes more constructive when combined with patience and awareness. Basil is thoughtful, sensitive, intelligent, and sometimes uncertain about himself. He often wants to be useful, but he may become nervous when he does not immediately know what to do. His stories frequently focus on perseverance, asking for help, recognizing individual strengths, and believing in one's abilities. Basil demonstrates that being careful or hesitant does not mean being weak. I appreciate him because he represents children who need encouragement before they feel confident enough to participate. Lily is a water sprite who is graceful, caring, and emotionally considerate. She often tries to improve situations, although even her good intentions can occasionally create unexpected consequences. Her character helps communicate lessons about responsibility, accepting mistakes, and repairing relationships after something goes wrong. To me, Lily represents compassion guided by accountability. Caring about someone also means being honest when an action has caused a problem. Root is a young Earth sprite who is playful, innocent, and extremely curious. His speech and behavior make him one of the most childlike members of the group. Because Root is still learning, his stories often involve comfort, patience, belonging, and understanding the difference between wanting something and genuinely needing it. I found Root lovable because he brought humor and vulnerability to the show. He also gave the older characters opportunities to demonstrate patience. Sage is the wisest sprite and often provides information about magical rules, traditions, and unusual problems in Grotto's Grove. However, his wisdom does not automatically solve everything. The younger sprites and Johnny still need to make decisions, cooperate, and learn through experience. Sage represents guidance rather than control. He can point the characters in the right direction, but they remain responsible for completing the journey. And Gwen is Johnny's human friend and a recurring character who appears in many different occupations. Her willingness to try new work reinforces the principle that people may discover their abilities by exploring unfamiliar experiences. Her recurring message about trying something new is one of the show's most practical lessons. I think Gwen encourages flexibility, curiosity, and respect for different kinds of work. Now, let us talk about the memorable stories and lessons. Several stories represent the qualities I appreciate most about the series. In Laugh Basil Laugh, Johnny and Ginger try to cheer up Basil when he is unwell. The story shows that care requires patience and that what comforts one person may differ from what comforts another. In Leave a Little Lettuce, the characters learn about sharing and avoiding selfish behavior when resources belong to a larger community. In Yes You Can, Basil becomes discouraged after repeatedly losing a flying contest. Johnny helps him recognize that one unsuccessful activity does not define all his abilities. In Ginger's Antenna Dilemma, Ginger becomes uncomfortable with the appearance of her antenna. The story promotes self-acceptance and reminds viewers that individual features contribute to identity. In Ginger Listens, Ginger temporarily loses her ability to speak after using too many words. The experience teaches her that communication includes listening rather than waiting for another opportunity to speak. In Dr. Basil, Basil attempts to help Johnny recover from a cold but initially forgets the simplest and most respectful step, asking Johnny what he needs. Other stories address teamwork, stage fright, environmental protection, responsibility, friendship, and accepting changes that cannot simply be reversed through magic. And now, let's talk about how the show influenced me. Watching Johnny and the Sprites during my preschool years reinforced several practical skills. First, it encouraged active listening. Many conflicts happened because one character misunderstood another or acted without listening carefully. That lesson applied to following my teacher's instructions, communicating with relatives, and participating in classroom activities. Second, it encouraged creative expression. Johnny regularly used music to work through problems. Although I was not composing songs like him, the show demonstrated that creativity could be used to organize thoughts and communicate feelings. Third, it strengthened my appreciation for cooperation. Johnny and the Sprites rarely solved major problems alone. Their different abilities became useful when they combined them. that principle was applicable during classroom group work, playtime, and family activities. A successful team does not require everyone to think or behave identically. It requires people to understand what each member can contribute. The program also reinforced empathy. Basil's uncertainty, Ginger's strong emotions, Lily's good intentions, and Ruth's innocence all required different responses. Johnny did not use one solution for every character. That taught a valuable lesson. Helping someone effectively requires understanding the person, not merely applying a general answer. My Playhouse Disney memory had never failed me even today. My discovery of the show in April 2011 is especially meaningful because it happened during a period of transition. I had come from Daraga, Albay, and was beginning a chapter that included summer vacations and preschool education in Metro Manila. Television became one source of familiarity while I adjusted to different surroundings. Seeing Johnny and the Sprites on Playhouse Disney Asia connected me with a colorful and reassuring environment. Grotto's Grove was unfamiliar to Johnny at first, just as parts of Metro Manila were unfamiliar to me. However, he gradually formed relationships, learned about his surroundings, and became comfortable in his new home. I may not have consciously recognized that parallel when I was 4, but it helps explain why the program stayed in my memory. The fact that I discovered it shortly before Playhouse Disney became Disney Junior also makes it part of the closing period of one television identity and the beginning of another. For me, it represents both the classic Playhouse Disney era and my introduction to the Disney Junior years that followed. And do you know why the show deserves more recognition? Johnny and the Sprites is not really discussed as frequently today as several animated Disney preschool programs, but its production style remains distinctive. It successfully combined human performers and puppets without making either side feel disconnected. It introduced young viewers to theatrical music, encouraged emotional vocabulary, and presented environmental and social lessons through memorable fantasy stories. The show also respected children's ability to understand complex feelings. It addressed insecurity, disappointment, jealousy, mistakes, illness, exclusion, responsibility, and fear without becoming overwhelming. Most importantly, it presented learning as a mutual process. Johnny taught the Sprites about human life, but the Sprites also taught Johnny. Knowledge did not move in only one direction. That is an excellent message for viewers of any age. Every person can be both a teacher and a learner. So in conclusion, Johnny and the Sprites is an extraordinary Playhouse Disney series that deserves continued appreciation for its music, puppetry, storytelling, characters, and educational values. I first watched it in April 2011 at age 4, during an important transition from my birth town of Daraga, Albay, into my preschool-era experiences in Metro Manila, way before permanently moving to Legazpi for my primary school years and beyond and until adult life today. Because of that timing, the program became more than a television show. It became part of my memory of adapting to a new environment and discovering the world of Playhouse Disney. Johnny, Ginger, Basil, Lily, Ruth, Sage, Gwen, and the other inhabitants of Grotto's Grove showed that friendship grows through listening, cooperation, patience, creativity, and respect. I recommend this series to anyone interested in classic Playhouse Disney programming, musical children's television, puppetry, or wholesome stories that teach without underestimating their audience. And that really ends this salute video today. Thank you very much for watching. Please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done so. Your support helps me continue producing more salutes about television programs and other media that have influenced different stages of my life. Feel free to leave a comment sharing your memories of Johnny and the Sprites. Who was your favorite character? Which episode or musical number do you remember most? And what lesson from the show stayed with you? Thank you once again for joining me in this visit to Grotto's Grove. This has been Antonio, signing off. To God be the glory, always. Be safe in the power of Him, forever. Amen.